Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Jessica Kaplan, and I'm the horticulture manager here at the Conservancy. We are so excited for today's panel discussion. This is the first webinar of our 4-part horticulture Zoom series. This spring and summer, our horticulture exhibition at Madison Square Park, Spring Forward into Summer, will highlight the cut flower industry. This exhibition explores the utilitarian art, cyclical themes, and cultural significance of the cutting garden. Our discussion today focuses on the fruit of such gardens and farms and its ties to floral arrangements, the much valued bouquet, and the talented folks who create them. Just one housekeeping note before we get started. Please put your questions for our panelists in the Q&A located at the bottom of your screen. Tonight, we are joined by Ayana Milligan, a horticulture associate at the Conservancy, and 3 fantastic florists, Molly Oliver, Farah Maxwell, and Delilah Dominguez. Molly Oliver has championed sustainable farming and floral design since her early 20s, working as a community organizer / farmer in urban agriculture for 15 years. And through her business, Molly Oliver Flowers, founded in 2012. The Molly Oliver Flowers Design Studio specializes in designing with seasonal flowers for events and offers subscriptions to locally grown flowers through its Seasonal Flower Project, where 15% of profits support BIPOC farmers and land-based reparations. Molly's work over the years has been featured in Modern Farmer Magazine, Florists Review, Brides Magazine, the New York Times, the Slow Flowers Podcast, Radio Cherry Bomb, Eco Cult, The Good Trade, Bust Magazine, Well Wed, and more. For Farah Maxwell, flowers have been a staple in her life for quite some time. Living down south afforded her the opportunity to develop an intimate relationship with the earth. When Farah moved to Brooklyn, she immediately sought out green communities because she realized how vital it was to a successful life. Brooklyn provided Farah with the opportunity to discover urban green spaces, and it wasn't long after moving to her neighborhood that she joined a community garden and then served on the board for 4 years. Consequently, this led to her first floral endeavor in 2014. Farah still gets anxious and excited every time she works with flowers. Much like our interpersonal relationships with each other, every time she works with flowers, she has the opportunity to see each flower and how well or not so well they work together. Floral symbiosis is a business model striving to capture the individual and symbiotic effect that flowers have on the environment and in our aesthetic experiences. Delilah Dominguez is a Latinx Brooklyn native and owner of Stolen Magnolia. Stolen Magnolia is a floral studio offering a variety of interesting plants, blooms, and botanical goods. Stolen Magnolia specializes in floral designs for all sized events. So now that we've met our 3 wonderful panelists, we will jump right into our topics of conversation. Let's begin by having each of you explain a bit more about what led you to the floral industry and also how your businesses got started. So whoever would like to start.
I guess I'll start. So I am a mother of an 8-year-old daughter. And what led me to become a florist was my initial experience with the community gardens in Brooklyn. And as Jessica said, I was on the board for 4 years of BQLT, a nonprofit that stewards community gardens throughout Brooklyn. And when I had my daughter, I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And I said, what kind of business can I start that's going to afford me the opportunity to do something that I love, to provide something to the community that was not really there. There weren't any places to get cut flowers. And so I started my business asking a local community-led cooperative on the corner of my block. So I literally got started on the corner of my block and asked them if I could host a pop-up there. And that's the inception of my business. And it's been going strong since then. So it originally started out as a way for me to connect with being a new mom and, you know, still like maintaining some semblance of my previous life working in gardens. So that was how I started my business.
I guess I'll go next. So my parents were actually, they owned a greenhouse for about 30 years before they retired. And my dad did a lot of like the gardening aspect of it. And my mom was the actual like in-house florist. So it's kind of something that's always been in my blood, even no matter how hard I try to fight it and try to go after different career paths, flowers have always come back to me one way or another. And I actually opened up my own floral studio in Brooklyn about a month before the pandemic exploded and happened. So it's been a wild ride, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
And I'll go next. It's so great hearing both of your stories more fully tonight. So I'm Molly. I came to flowers, I always say, through farming. I grew up in suburbs of Connecticut. My mother had a flower garden and a vegetable garden, and actually did the flowers for the local church. So she was always bringing flowers into the home, but you know, it wasn't until so many years later that I found a path back to flowers, and it was really unexpected for me. I found farming in my early 20s. I was working in community gardens through an environmental justice nonprofit in the South Bronx, and working with them to grow food and working with youth and kind of learning all about growing vegetables and growing things there in those community gardens. Despite the fact that I had grown up around a mother who gardened, I just didn't take an interest until that point when I really felt and saw the ways that local food systems could help to fight climate change and build health in communities and give people back control over their diet and their food source. So I was really inspired by that, but basically caught the farming bug. And eventually, through a training program in organic farming in California, I was taught how to grow flowers. And until that point, I was very like veg focused. And it was actually a really rocky start. I was taught how to make bouquets, and I'd watch them go off to market, and then I'd watch them come back because they hadn't sold. And it was really bruising for my ego. I felt like, oh, I guess I like can't do flowers. I'm not good at this. But I stuck with it and moved back to New York City in 2010 and kept at it, kept growing flowers. And I managed an urban farm in Crown Heights for 8 years where we grew cut flowers. And my skills kind of built over those years. And eventually had a friend ask me to do her wedding in 2011. And after that, another friend offered to put a website up. And yeah, it just wasn't even, I never intended to start a flower business. It just kind of happened, but I have found for sure just the joy in the creative process and working with people and maintaining that connection to farming as well.
Yeah, that's great. You all have such incredible backgrounds and experiences, and I think it's great for people to hear how you came to this career. So next, I would just like you all to describe your unique styles, especially for people here who might be looking for a florist. This might be an opportunity if you hear any keywords that these are your people. So please, however you would explain your unique style.
So I would say my style is definitely unique, very artistic. We love to play with different textures, seasonal blooms, different colors. And I think like one of the key elements that we like to work with within the shop is like, what are you trying to inspire? What's the message that you're trying to send? So like, are you looking for flowers to cheer up a friend? Are you looking for flowers to kind of, you know, brighten someone's day or tell them how much you care for them, how much you miss them? Because there's also plenty of different flowers along with the different colors that have different meanings. So we're very like in tuned, and I want to say more so very like thoughtful in that way. But we love playing with like all the weird stuff. I'm like, the weirder, the better. Bring it on. I want to see all the interesting stuff.
I would agree with Delilah. I love the unique flowers. I would describe my style as kind of wild but poetic in a mix of like the garden aspect. I also really love eclectic flowers. I like to use artichokes. I like to use vegetables in my design. I like to use things like collard greens, Swiss chard, radishes. And so I would describe my style as a hodgepodge of so many things. It would be eclectic, it would be poetic, it would be garden inspired, because I also like to use a lot of seasonal flowers if I can. And yeah, I think I would describe it that way, with an eclectic mix of like unusual things in the arrangements.
Yeah, and for me, I guess I would describe it as seasonal for sure. Since I started the business, my goal was to connect people with what was growing in season and connect them directly with the farmers in our region. And so, for me, I think as a farmer too, you're kind of in like a zone with a flower. If it's snapdragon season, you're just harvesting snapdragons, and then comes scabiosa, and then come dahlias, and it's so exciting to really appreciate the next flower that comes into season. And you're almost like tired and bored of the one you've just been inundated with for so long. So that's one of the reasons why I love working with seasonal flowers, is that I find so much joy in like reconnecting with a flower, a new flower that I haven't seen in a year. And so I would say seasonal, I would say whimsical. I like there to be some movement and some freedom in the design. And, I would say most, sustainability is sort of the core. So for me, while I really love to be stretched as an artist, and I feel that it's sort of why I'm still in the profession, is the fun of it, the creativity of it, is just getting to bring my client's vision to life, whatever that might be. So if they come to me and they're looking for a more modern, clean look, minimalist look, or they want something more bohemian, or what they call boho these days, or they want a more garden style or organic, I'm really happy to like bend and shift and make that happen using the seasonal flowers that we have available. That's what makes it fun and keeps it interesting for me.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I love how you all have your own takes on that. So next, I would love for you all to kind of help out some people that might want to start their own business. And what advice would you give them? Or maybe even better, what is something that maybe you wish you knew starting out that you can pay forward here tonight?
I would definitely say to ask for help, to not be afraid to reach out to other florists. Many times, I kind of struggled with things early on because I'm a do-it-yourself kind of person. I was in the military, so I'm just very gun-ho, like when I'm, about certain things. And I think that independence sometimes was my downfall, like learning things like the hard way. So for me, I personally would say, Google or even go on Instagram, put in hashtags of local florists wherever you are. If you're in Brooklyn, if you're in Manhattan, if you're even outside of the New York City area, you can always find people, and you'd be surprised like how many people are willing to like just give you advice. I know Molly, she's like always giving me advice when I've asked her about things, and even like referrals for like different things, or asking florists like, where do you get your shopping bags? Where do you get this supply from? It will save you a lot of hassle in terms of, maybe using the wrong items. in making those mistakes. So I would say just ask questions, research as much as you can. And for me, pricing was a big thing, like learning how to price my items, because there's no blueprint online to help you as a florist figure out how to price your things. There are vague things online, but really you have to kind of keep with the industry, because you don't want to be a florist that's giving low prices and estimates to people and driving the price of the industry down. So I would say, like, talk to other industry professionals to get more insight on pricing, supply chain, where they purchase items, wholesalers for certain items, where to get the best product, and that sort of thing.
Definitely, I couldn't agree more. Definitely ask for help. I feel like I could have saved myself so many headaches if I was more open to like asking other florists, like, hey, how do you do this? Like, why is this happening in my business? Like, how can I prevent this? Like, how are you guys doing so well? Definitely community over competition. And like you mentioned before, I feel like I kind of learned the hard way. And I just went and like visited florists that I really admire, like Brittany from Grace and Grit, the ladies over at Rosehip, the ladies over at Fern Botanica, Stems. And I'm just like, hey, like, how's it going, guys? Like, how do you do this? Please help. Like, I've had a hard time figuring this out. Could you please advise me any way possible? So definitely asking for help when you need it, and understanding that like you cannot do everything. You can't do it all. Like, and there's going to be some things that you do very, very well. And there's some things that it's not your jam, and that's totally okay. But definitely asking for help for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to third that. As someone who got into this in such an indirect and unplanned way, I'll say I could have saved a lot of time making mistakes by just I was going to say, like, take a year or two, take a season or two, even 6 months, like, to work for another florist. That is something that I never did. I never worked for another professional florist. And even though I came from this farm training background where we did learn a lot about what we call post-harvest handling to help flowers last the longest that they possibly can. It's a whole other world, floristry. And I think that, I could have saved myself a lot of time and a lot of headaches if I had put in some time working for another florist, even if they weren't sustainability focused or seasonal flower focused. There's so many transferable skills. And then also just, how do they manage their studio day to day? How do they manage their teams? How do they approach events? How do they prepare for that? And what does that look like? And so I think if I had just sort of seen it all from the inside, that would have been really useful. I think you don't necessarily always take, you don't necessarily take everything you learn from another florist, but certainly, as Delilah and Farah were saying, things about pricing and, just little things, little tips and tricks about, how to preserve roses, or, just different things that you can pick up from other florists who've been at it longer than you have. So I would certainly say, try working with another florist for sure.
Yeah, that's all great advice. And I love community over competition, Delilah. I think that is so true in fields like this in general. We really need to lift each other up and learn from each other just to be the best designers and people that we can be. So I think this is a perfect kind of segue into, what would you like to see change in this industry? I've been doing a lot of deep digging in preparation for our upcoming exhibition, and I've seen how, the cut flower industry and even florists' designs and where they get their cut flowers and things like that, how all that has changed. And what changes would you like to see in the future of this industry? Is there anything specifically that you think as an industry needs to be worked on? Molly, do you want to start?
Oh, sure. I realized I forgot to mute myself. Sorry about that. But yes, I can start. Um, yeah, there's so many things that I hope will continue to change. And in many ways, like go back to the way it was, which is to sort of, certainly go back to supporting local farmers as they come back. There aren't that many local flower farmers that grow in volume. So to have every florist in New York City suddenly go 100% local would actually probably be impossible at this moment, just based on volume of what's out there. So I think sourcing local is a big part of it. I think getting away from floral foam, using alternatives that we know are compostable and not carcinogenic seems like a really good move. I wish it would just be outlawed. And then other little pipe dream is wishing that all the plastic sleeves on 28th Street would go away. I think that there's a lot of stumbling blocks for florists that want to become more eco-conscious when it's really like down the pike that the changes have to be made. So, if you go into the 28th Street Flower District and you are buying international product, 9 times out of 10, it's wrapped in plastic, a flimsy plastic that New York City's recycling system won't accept. So it has to go into the landfill. So one of the things I always think about, whether it's like, I'm mad because I just got a parking ticket when there's like all these crazy hotels taking away all of our parking. It's like, I want to see florists organize. Like it's like a pipe dream for me to see, sort of bring the organizing background that I have, to have us organize and ask for changes. There's a big gender differentiation between florists and wholesalers on 28th Street. And it's a big family and it's a big community. And there's a lot of love and a lot of trust. But at the same time, I think women have something to offer in terms of the way that we collaborate. And as Delilah was saying, the way that we help each other out. And so, what are these problems that we could solve together? We're stronger as a voice if we get involved. And I think 28th Street is constantly under pressure of being fully gentrified right on out of Manhattan. And I don't know that any female florists that I know are at the table in that discussion. So that's another question that I have and a concern that I have. And this panel makes me really happy because just seeing the diversity of florists and, represented in spaces like this, that Delilah and Farah are here, and that all different florists come from all different backgrounds and bring their unique talents and art and community through their work. And I think about that both in terms of the diversity of florists that I love to learn from and get inspired by, but also the farmers. Farming is one of the whitest professions in our country. And, that informs the flowers that wind up on our table. And so I often think about like, what would change, if the farming population was to really diversify, like what varieties would be chosen and what would become beautiful and what we would see in magazines and what we would then see in weddings. That's one of the reasons why I like to support land-based reparations and the growth of farmers of color, and just wanting to see that that beauty that comes from diversity. So those are, just little things I would like to see change.
I had never really thought about the underrepresentation of women on 28th Street until you just said that. And I think because I shop mainly with J. Rose, and Tasha is like, she's the woman behind the business, the wife behind the business. But for me, I would like to see, as Molly said, more sustainability, less foam. And I would like to see florists sharing techniques on how they achieve floral foam-free designs, and maybe like lead some sort of discussions on people who may want to become foam-free, but just don't really know how to start or what type of mechanics to use to achieve the desired result. So I think for me, I would like to see a focus on sustainability just in doing weddings. Like my business over the past 2 years has increased in terms of the amount of weddings that I'm doing. And many of them are coming from referrals from Molly. So thank you. I want to thank you publicly here. And so that's part of the collaboration, because she like passes along these referrals to me, which I think is really amazing. And I'm grateful for that. So I just wanted to thank you for that. But I think that, that sustainability practice would definitely help reduce the amount of waste. Just seeing like the amount of work that we put in, like the labor that we put into weddings, all for at the end of the night for it to be kind of just tossed, and they have these wonderful organizations. I know Garbage Goddess, who I haven't had the chance to work with, they lead a really great composting effort. And I just received an email from Grow NYC, because I also had aspirations to become a honeybee farmer and to have a cut flower farm, which is still kind of like in the future. I haven't totally abandoned that dream. But yeah, I think like the fact that they're cutting like millions of dollars in the city's composting programs in New York City is really like sad, because so many events happen in New York and that waste is just going to sit in landfills. So, I'd love to see a more sustainable way that we could like even, drop our composting materials at like a location on 28th Street or something like that, where, florists can kind of like actually lead the change and be the change that we want to see, because many of us want to, have these sustainable practices. We just need direction in a lot of ways.
I couldn't agree more. Sustainability is definitely like top on our list, and doing away with foam. And also I feel like my team and I have come a long way in trying to figure out like ways to become more sustainable. And like Farah mentioned, like different mechanics and how do we do this? How do we keep it hydrated? How do we keep it from wilting? And then also seeing a change in like what happens to all of these things after these events. So like being more mindful of like recycling and composting, and making also like composting more accessible in our community. So it's not only like just florists, but like other people in the community who want to compost, like they can go to a drop-off location and kind of drop it off. But yeah, more sustainability for sure in our industry is what I would like to see.
Well, I will say that at Madison Square Park, we do collaborate with Grow NYC, and you can come between 8 and 1 and drop off your compost and chat with lovely people about composting to answer all your questions. So yeah, I totally agree with that. I think a lot of us are moving towards more sustainable practices. So one question that I think is really important that we hear from all three of you is, what should people know about buying cut flowers, and how can they support the work that you guys do?
I think one thing to know is that flowers are expensive, especially if you are looking to get into this industry. You should be well aware of the rising inflated cost of flowers. And I think that might be the one big thing that people should know about flowers. I also want to piggyback off of something that Molly said about seasonality, and like as a florist, like studying, what flowers are available in what season, so that when you're writing proposals to clients or talking to them and brainstorming ideas, you're not telling them that you can give them peonies and, the dead of summer. You're like telling them that this is a spring thing, or it may be a winter thing if available, right? And so I think like knowing the seasonality of when flowers are available will be one of the key things, I think, for those who are looking to enter into this industry.
I can go. Yeah, the first thing that came to mind was just a statistic that I share a lot that maybe people have heard, maybe they haven't, but 80% of the flowers we buy in the United States, whether at our local bodega or supermarket or the flower district or florist, floral shop, 80% are grown overseas. In our case, most of those are coming from Colombia and Ecuador. And, you know, as a farmer, I so much respect for the people that are doing the work of growing those flowers. It's 60% women who are doing the work of planting, harvesting, packing, shipping. But just to know that, you know, they, like farm workers here in the United States, face really difficult conditions. There's documented sexual harassment, long working hours with kind of like lax labor laws, and exposure to pesticides and herbicides. And I think, you know, that's just something to be aware of. You know, if you think about what you consume and what you put in your body and what you buy, you know, at the grocery store, you could bring that same thought. That's why so many of us as florists are interested in working with local and seasonal product, because even on our end, when you're working with that international product, it is often coated in pesticides. And so there are high rates of cancer among florists, especially older florists. And so, you know, I think those are things to be aware of, just kind of health justice issues surrounding flowers. And then I think maybe on the more positive side, you can find local farmers in your area to either source from as a florist or to buy from as a consumer. And there's a couple of organizations that do a great job of building directories of local farmers and florists that source local. Slow Flowers is one, but an even easier website would be localflowers.org. So if you are in Alabama or Oregon and you're looking for a florist to send flowers to a loved one and you want to support a local farmer, then go to localflowers.org. I also have a highlight on my Instagram page for that. But I love what, you know, Farah, what you were saying about seasonality, and just if you're a person who actually needs flowers for an event, let the florist educate you about what's in season and what's going to look good. Like, let us use our professional experience to, you know, bring to the fold, because, you know, we have an eye for what is quality, you know, and that can change from month to month and even week to week. So I think having some flexibility in your approach as a consumer is good, and just recognizing the beauty that every flower has to bring. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think flexibility is really, really important. And I don't think a lot of people realize that these flowers are coming over from overseas, or they are being shipped from faraway places. So being able to being open to being educated about what's available to us and what we can substitute for particular events or special occasions. So if someone really, really wants peonies, but they're unavailable, be like, well, we have something that's just as gorgeous and just as meaningful that is, you know, local to us and available during this time. But yeah, being open to learning more about the seasonality of it, what's available, the meanings behind it, and just all the work that we kind of have to go through to bring these beautiful, beautiful flowers to you, and then bringing these beautiful creations to life.
Yeah, I love that. I think being mindful is something we can take into every aspect of our daily lives. And I think this is a good time to also mention again that this is a 4-part series, and our next webinar on the 28th will be with growers who are in our tri-state area, and we'll hopefully get to hear a little bit more about what you guys are talking about in some more detail, which is really great. So before we move on to our question and answer, I have a few kind of rapid fire questions that I think will help people who are maybe looking for florists to find out a little bit more about you guys. So what holidays and events are you gearing up for, or are you starting to take orders for? I know with COVID, wedding season we're like 3 years behind or something at this point. So I'd love to hear more about that and kind of what are you getting ready for right now on April 14th?
I'm drilling out proposals like a mad woman. I'm booking a lot of weddings. I'm doing like milestone birthday celebrations and luncheons for like, corporate clients. So that's what I'm doing now. Super busy, like things are picking up. And I was fortunate to work during the pandemic, and I pivoted my business in a really interesting and unique way. So now I'm doing more in-person weddings and events. So that's what I'm gearing up for. I haven't even processed that Mother's Day is like in a couple of weeks, because I usually do like a Mother's Day pop-up. But this year, I think I'm skipping that because I'm just really swamped with weddings and events. And I have learned to say, I can't do it all. And while I always have people that are like, are you doing arrangements? Are you doing this for Mother's Day? Are you doing, and I have to tell them, no, I'm not, and I can't please everyone because it's a lot to manage, trying to like just, gear up for the influx of weddings, because like you said, weddings have been on hold for a couple of years. And so now everyone wants to get married in 2022. So that's what I'm gearing up for in these coming months. And I'm pretty booked up until like October. So it's been a fruitful year, to say the least.
Yes, we are, as we roll in from like spring to summer, we have been like filling up our books like crazy. We're being booked, which is like a wonderful thing. And we're super busy. I almost forgot about Mother's Day, but I didn't. And it's happening. And we're just trying to figure out the logistics of like what makes the most sense. Like what can we have available for our clientele that are walking in the shop? What can we have available online for people to order for delivery and pickup? So it's now like a lot of logistics, a lot of calculating budgets and just figuring out like, okay, what's going to be available to us in what shades, what colors, what themes do we want to work with? And then also on top of that, what events do we have happening? So what do we have to pre-order? What supplies do we need? What materials do we need? So it's very busy. And I thank everyone who's been like patient and just very, like attentive when it comes to like emails and responses and all this stuff. We're busy and we're working really hard, and we want to make everything extra beautiful and extra amazing and unforgettable.
Yay. I'm right there with both of you. Like Mother's Day, oh my God. I literally like launched Mother's Day 2 days ago. And I'm still working out the details, but it's up on the website. I mostly know what I'm getting. I purchased the vases. So Mother's Day is happening. We have our seasonal flower project, which is our weekly or bi-weekly flower subscription, which is ongoing. People can sign up anytime. If you want to receive flowers next Wednesday, you have to sign up by 2 p.m. on Fridays. And we feature a different seasonal flower almost every week, all coming from within 200 miles of New York City. So if you really want to experience like what our immediate tri-state area has to offer, and send direct support to local farmers, and also send that 15% to farmers of color, then join the Seasonal Flower Project. And for weddings, yes, the rollover from 2020 is so real that I've never seen such advanced booking in my 10 years. And it feels like an honor. And also it's a little scary, frankly, when I had somebody request a 2024 date from me this past week, which just floored me. And at some point you have to consider whether that's smart, because taking someone's deposit like 2 years in advance, so much could change, as we all now very well know. And so, you know, in general, I'm booking weddings for 2023. We still have some space in the fall, definitely December. And we do weddings year round. I've a very shrunken availability because I only work with anemones and ranunculus and hellebore and things that are seasonal for the winter. But we are available in winter, this coming winter. And then in addition, I will actually plug something which is exciting for anyone on this panel tonight, any of our attendees. And to Delilah and Farah, I would just extend the invitation, just an open invitation to come for the latter part, if you're interested. I'm going to do a little tour of 28th Street as the tail end of this year's Slow Flowers Conference. So the Slow Flowers Conference is happening at the very end of June at Stone Barn Center in upstate New York. And it's a conference for enthusiasts of slow flowers. It's a conference for farmers. It's a conference for florists. It is not cheap. But on Wednesday, the 29th, I'm going to host a walking tour of some of my favorite wholesalers that really champion local and seasonal flowers. And people will still have time to like pop into Dutch Flower Line and some of the supply shops like Jamali. And then we're going to cab to my studio, and I'm going to basically give a talk about how I approach sustainability, from marketing to the kitchen, like the staff kitchen, to the actual event and post-event. And we're just going to have like sort of a loose and open discussion around what do we want sustainability to really look like? And what do we really think about these foam-free alternatives? Are they actually compostable? Like, I really want to have a conversation that and kind of interrogates like the way sustainability is currently being discussed in floristry. So that'll be Wednesday, June 29th, and it's up on my website.
That's wonderful. Such great information in a short amount of time. So it is 6:43. I do want to give you all one more question before Ayana jumps in with our Q&A. I see we have some questions down there. So where can people stay? I know you've kind of mentioned it, and we're putting your information in the chat, but just verbally, you know, where can people stay up to date with the great events and offerings that you have coming up and into the future, so people can follow you and hopefully enlist you guys in some great projects and events?
Instagram. Instagram stories, and you can sign up for our newsletter. I decided this year I'm only writing like 4 newsletters because that's like a capacity thing for me this year. So I'll do one each season. I haven't done the spring one yet. So if you sign up for the newsletter, you'll get news from me pretty soon.
Yeah, I second that. Definitely our Instagram, our website, and I've been learning how to update our Pinterest and TikToks a little better, which is very interesting. But definitely Instagram or our website.
And same for me. Instagram is the main method of delivery for a lot of my arrangements and my work. And my website, which is www.floralsymbiosis.com. And right now, currently, I don't have any deliveries or any products on my website, just because events are kind of taking up a lot of my my time, and I'm not a retail florist. So I kind of work on special events, weddings, and sometimes I do like deliveries. And I offered like a weekly subscription, but I've like since, you know, because of the weddings, it's been like kind of chaotic with a lot of like weddings. And so I've been focusing primarily on delivering the best experience to my clients. So I've like halted deliveries and other, you know, retail-based items.
Thank you. That's super helpful. So now I'm gonna pass it over to Ayana, who's going to facilitate our question and answer now.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I really admire the recurring themes of like community and healthy practices when it comes to, understanding your individual limits and capacities, so you're not pouring from an empty pot and you can provide the best that you can for whatever season you're in. And just the different ways that you pour into one another despite being like, it's competitive. So in your small business owners, but like you still look out for each other. So great job. And thank you all for the enlightening conversation. Thank you, Jessica, for moderating for us so far. So we're going to jump into these Q&As. So just to paraphrase this first one that we're kicking off with, can you speak to some of your formal or informal floral education experiences before, during, or even after you started your businesses?
I'll just say real quick, I mentioned that I trained as a farmer, so I got some training there and just how to cut, process, and make bouquets very simply, which if you were on a farm that grew flowers, you would learn all of those things. I also, the first and only ever workshop I took was with Passion Flower Sue, who I'm a big fan of. She's an incredible artist and sustainability is at the core of her work. She does workshops and tutorials virtually. She moves around the country and often gives workshops and is part of different conferences. I've invested in team flower packages. I've attended, different floral conferences, either for, a half day or just virtually. I took one of Saipua's workshops in Dutch flower or Dutch masters design. So there's a lot of local people that are constantly giving workshops, and I definitely follow a lot of florists, and when and where I can afford it, I definitely keep up with training because there's still a lot of things that I feel very insecure about and like really want to get better at, frankly. So yeah, it's like you always got to keep your tools sharp, and kind of stay up to date with the different mechanics, as we say in the biz, the different kind of structures that we use to manipulate flowers or to create installations. And I'm grateful that there's that vibe of just like community education now. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like there's more available to us now, but when I first started my journey in the floral industry, like 6 to 7 years ago, I was like, okay, what classes can I take? What workshops can I take? Because my background was primarily in finance. It had nothing to do with flowers. So I'm like, who is going to hire me? Like, who's going to hire me to work with flowers? So I would literally like volunteer. I would freelance. I would like visit floral shops and be like, hey, do you guys need help with anything? Like, I'm available between this time and this time. And then once I was able to like save up a little bit more money, I started investing and taking classes at like the Brooklyn Botanical Garden or other workshops that were available to me at the time. But someone told me, like, when I first started freelancing, they were like, don't pay a penny. And like, for any workshop, just go and literally like start sweeping the floor, start helping people, start learning from other florists, because they're the best teachers. They're going to teach you everything that they know, and they're going to show you all the tips and tricks that you need to know in order to be sustainable. So my best advice to anyone looking to get into the floral industry and they don't know where to start is like, pick a shop that you like really admire and see if they need a hand. Most of the time we do. And another thing to do is save up and invest in something or in someone's workshop that you really, really, really admire. There's so many out there, but like when it comes to me and like taking new classes and trying to learn new stuff, I'm like, okay, what is Sean Strong doing? What is the Floral Reserve doing? What is the Flower Coach doing? So those tools are out there. You just have to be very, what's the word? Not specific, but very intentional about who you want to learn from and why.
So for me, I've taken a few workshops. I did one workshop with Taylor of Fox Fodder, and it was beautiful because we got to visit a dahlia farm in upstate New York. So that was really amazing just to see and get to choose from like the hyper local, like cutting the flowers and taking it right there and making an arrangement. I've also taken classes at the Brooklyn Botanical Garden as well. And for me, I would say my best teacher is experience. My style has definitely evolved and grown, as has I, as a florist and as a designer, as an artist, as a business owner, you know. And so for me, education is investing in courses online, like learning how to price things a little bit better and how to not be afraid to like send that proposal out with that number, you know, and not to doubt yourself. And so like taking these online courses that specifically help with pricing. I know Flowering Minds has like a really great like package that helps you like nail down your proposals and make sure that everything is crisp. And for me, I would say watch YouTube videos, buy books. And Passion Flower Sue, she even has a book that details some of her sustainable mechanics behind making flower crowns and different things. And so invest in buying books. And if you can't buy the books, check them out at the library. Many libraries will even have these books and you can check them out there. And so I think really just experience is, for me, practice makes perfect. And for me, I feel like my style is only going to get better as I develop as an artist and grow and learn new things and keep applying myself. So I would just encourage you all to just do it. You know, get you some flowers, even if you get flowers from, you know, your local bodega, you know, or wherever you can get them, Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, you know, and just start practicing. Oh, and one other resource that we haven't really mentioned are the farmers markets. That's where you really have direct access to farmers and you can actually talk to them about vase life, what's going to give you the longest vase life. If you know, oh, I really love these flowers, and they may say, oh, this, you know, and they are knowledgeable, so they can help you, you know, decide what might be best. Oh, I'm giving this away for a birthday. Like, oh, these will last like a really long time and they dry nicely. So, you know, just learning from others, you know, always on a journey for self-exploration, I would say.
Thank you all. That was very detailed. I'm going to segue right into, do you know of any particular web resources or directories that curious folks can turn to for relevant internships and jobs, since like it's been recurring that, you know, try to get the experience with the florist. So do you know of any particular websites? I know like Metro Hort Group has like a free access to their like horticulture jobs, and sometimes that includes 4.0 opportunities. But if you know of any, I think they're curious about that.
I don't know of any specific directory for floral design internships, volunteering, or work. I kind of wish that existed because I actually hired a full-time person for the very first time in 10 years this last year. And I didn't even at that point know about the Metro Hort website. I do think that that would be a good one. And I plan to use Metro Hort as a place to post job opportunities in the future. Other than that, I was on, what's a really common one? It's not Idealist, it's something else. Indeed. And then Good Food Jobs, which is not flowers, but there's a lot of, I feel like that website is a search engine for people looking to work for small local businesses in the food world. And I have just posted there because you just never know, like maybe somebody's interested. And then I think, just to Delilah's point and Farah's point, just find some people you really admire and just reach right out to them. That's how the vast majority of people who come to work for me find me. They just cold email. And I actually keep all those emails in a folder so that when and where I need people, I can always look back in there. I always tell people, send me your resume so I have it on file, and images of any work you've done. even if it's stuff you just did at home, you know, it doesn't have to be anything super professional or that you got paid for even. So yeah, I think just reaching out to people, seeing what help they need.
And I think Instagram is a really great way to do that. If you put in the tagline, so you can search for hashtags. So if you're looking for work in floral design, you could maybe Google hashtag Brooklyn Florist and a group of, and you'll see, and you can say, just send them a DM and say, or if they have in their bio, no DMs, because some people are, you know, against that. But if they don't have that, shoot them a DM and say, hey, I'm an emerging floral designer and I'd love to, you know, shadow you or freelance, or, you know, you'd be surprised. And honestly, now florists need as many hands on deck as possible, because with the amount of, you know, wedding inquiries and events that we are doing. So as Molly said, she has a Rolodex of people. Reach out to a florist that you admire and search their Instagram handles, and then send them an email and ask them, hey, do you need any freelance work, or are you hiring? You know, sometimes you just have to ask, because you just never know.
Yeah, a lot of our team members and freelancers I've met through word of mouth, or they've either come into the shop and kind of introduced themselves to me. I am one of those people who are like really crazy about DMs, because like so many DMs come through in a day, and then like I miss it. And then by the time I get to it, it's like 3 months later. So please, 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 like I much rather get an email, which I'm checking like constantly throughout the day, all day. And then that way, if you have like your resume attached, or like portfolios of like the work that you've done in the past, at least it's all in one place, and we could always reference it when we need to contact for like extra additional help. But yeah, I think mostly so far it's been just like word of mouth recommendations, or people who just like truly walk into the shop and they're like, hey, are you hiring? So definitely send it via email, or just come visit us.
All righty, thanks. So we're nearing the end of our program, so I'm only going to be able to squeeze in one more question. This one was really specific, so I'm going to ask this one. Someone was inquiring about how many stems should go in a wholesale bunch. I have no idea what florists expect for wholesale and how big my bunches should be. And they also squeezed in a thank you about dismantling gatekeeping, so I just had to share that one.
A pretty standard wholesale bunch is 10 stems for most flowers, but I would say, you know, like Lisianthus sometimes is like 7 stems, because one stem of Lisianthus is actually like the super bushy thing. So I just want to throw out, like, maybe reach out to the a co-op that I buy from frequently is the Connecticut Flower Collective. They're on Instagram, and you know, they have a whole list of pricing and stems per bunch. And I think, you know, we can always, like, if you were wondering about specific flowers, feel free to email me after this, but or go to 28th Street and sort of observe. But you'll start to notice, like, most flowers are 10 stem bunches. Sometimes roses are in dozen. Sometimes Lisianthus is like 7 stems. Eucalyptus bunches are often like randoms, like somewhere between 5 and 8. And so sometimes they're graded based on bulkiness and bunch, you know. And another thing I've noticed farmers do is that they'll sometimes do a farmer's bunch, where if it's a very teeny tiny stem, they'll just harvest enough to make what they feel is like a sizable bunch, but it's essentially up to the farmer to determine what that means. So I've seen farmers basically say, like, you know, set their own, not even identify how many stems are in that bunch. But obviously for the florist, it's like, we want to kind of have a sense of how much that is. So if you're selling virtually to florists, make sure there's a photo, like make sure there's some description, because it's really hard. It's one thing to be on 28th Street and be able to eye things and see things with, you know, the colors and the number of stems. And so once you're in the world of like sourcing local domestic flowers, maybe online, photos are so, so important, and just describing how many stems are in your bunch.
All right, it's already after 7. This was such a great conversation. The time flew by. What we're going to do is we're going to forward any unanswered questions to the panelists and find the best way to share those answers with you all in a follow-up. And this concludes our program. So thank you all for tuning in and attending and listening. I hope this discussion was fruitful for you, and have a good evening. We're going to be sharing a recording on our website.
Thank you so
all
much
for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, of course. Good night, everyone.
Good night.